This might be my very favorite place to give a talk for. All right. So shall we start? I don't think I need the microphone, but it's here. So what the purpose of this, and I hate the lights behind you, the purpose of this talk was kind of for people to look at what do they need to either expand or start an aesthetic practice. And I know up here in Queensland, the world is changing for a lot of people. And I think even before that, worldwide, we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a shift from injectables a little bit more toward devices, which makes me happy because that's what I do. I don't do injectables anymore, and so I think that's a great trend. So what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about a multi-platform device, and if anybody remembers me from the many, many years I've been coming out here, I never thought I would be sitting here or standing here talking to you guys about a multi-platform device. I just never dreamed I would be using one. So much so that the reason I am doing it is one of my very good friends is the VP of sales in the US, and he calls me up one day and says, "You have got to try this product." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's a multi-platform device." I said, "Well, that's okay. I don't need it." And so I said, "No." And he called me about 5 more times. He says, "I'll tell you what, you're going to like it. So I'm going to put one in your office and let you play with it and see what happens." And let me tell you, that changed my world when I actually got a hold of this thing. It is beyond my wildest expectations about how good it is. Because historically, multi-platform devices are good at a lot of things, but not very good at a lot of things. This one is great at a lot of things, and I wouldn't have believed it till I got to try it. So we're going to talk about this. The biggest challenge I've had here in Australia is retraining Cryomed in how to pronounce this device. Because I even heard at this meeting somebody calling it erythema, which to me sounds like a GI disease or something. But when I first heard him say that, I said, "What are you talking about?" So we're going to talk about Etherea today. So what you can do with this little device, which I was hoping they'd bring here and let you look at, you've all seen it, I think, is you can add up to 8 different applicators. Each and every one of these, I shouldn't say that because there are 2 that I haven't used. The 6 that I use are all really good. But I really only tend to use 4. They call this the Core 4. I didn't make that name up. I wanted to call it the Fab 5 because this is the group that I personally tend to use. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about each applicator. We're going to talk about how I do things and how I actually use them. So the IPL, first question everybody asks, is it as good as BBL? I said, no, it's not as good as BBL. It doesn't cost $300,000 either. But what I tell them, this IPL does everything I need an IPL to do. But don't think for a second I'm trying to tell you it's better than BBL, because it's not. They have dual flash lamps, they're faster. It's a different thing, but you pay a lot of money for things that you'll never use an IPL for. So you're going to basically use the expensive BBL for what I can do with this one. So they're nice things that they did copy. They're good at copying things. They take the best of a lot of things and put it in a handpiece. That you can change the filters easily. You just slide them in. Matter of fact, if you have a BBL, this looks strangely familiar to you because it's almost exactly how they do it. I did change this picture because when I was looking at it this morning, and I remembered I showed this picture earlier in this session, one of these sessions, and I couldn't see it. So I found one where you could actually see the 40 by 12 rectangle. It's like everyone else's. I originally had this because this is one of the early IPLs that had a coating on the outside. If you see that dark coating, because in years past, they didn't have a coating, so they would blind me. I couldn't even do IPL in the early days. Even with the darkest glasses, I blink my eyes with every pulse of what I do, and I still couldn't do IPL. But now I think it's a regulatory thing that every IPL has the same thing. What this does have that a lot don't have is it has the 8mm round spot and the 12 by 12 square. I use these all the time, and they just snap right over the top of the rectangle. Very easy, very quick. See, that's all I'm going to say about IPL. Now, my favorite handpiece, and this year I've been here a couple times now, and I talk about this device more than anything, because this has changed everything for me. So it's an ND YAP, a 1340 ND YAP. And I've been asked before I got to show this slide, this is not a typo. It is a P, it's not an ND YAG, it's an ND YAP. And what YAP is, or what the P is perovskite, which is a crystal mineral they found in Russia. I've actually found why they call it this. It's Lev Perovsky is the guy they named it after. He's some mineralogist in Russia, but at least I know where they got the name now. And I know you don't care, but I like this kind of stuff. So what's unique about it? It's non-ablative. In all of its forms, it's non-ablative. And you can see this histology. It doesn't do much on the epidermis. That's what that means. So it can be used in all skin types. And I didn't have this till this morning. I couldn't resist showing you this. Why it can be used in all skin types. Because there's almost no melanin absorption with this wavelength. And I just treat 1 through 6 skin with it. With no risk, no PIH, no trouble with the surface. I love this wavelength for this reason. It can be collimated and fractional. I don't think I talk about, I can't remember, but I don't think I tell you how I use these two. I'll tell you now. There's no slide. When I'm treating active acne, I use the collimated first, treat all the active lesions, which, by the way, all disappear in 24 or 48 hours. They're all gone, every one I've treated. And then I treat the fractional everywhere else. Mostly I use the fractional tip. The hand pico, this is the world's first, and still probably for a long time, the only handheld picosecond device. And this morning I looked and couldn't find it, but I have a chart showing the energies. And this, if you've seen it, it's this big. It has the same energy. It has more energy than Candela's PicoWay, deliverable energy. And it's equivalent to all the other big boxes. Sorry, Cryomed, who sells that PicoSure, that gigantic beast that takes up the whole room. But there's a reason for this. All the other big box picosecond things start inside the box and bounce around some mirrors to generate the pico, and then it comes out that long articulated arm, which I really hate. This one is all in the handpiece, and it actually travels this far before it hits the skin. That's why there's no energy loss whatsoever in this, and that's why it's so powerful. It has 1064, 532. It has multiple spot sizes, and most important is the fractional spot. All you do to go from collimated to fractional is just change the tip, just like with ProDeep. You just change a tip. It's all in these tips. And I've been down in Brazil where they make these, and they have the machine that makes the tips is bigger than this table and full, it's about 10 feet tall, and it's this super high-end, machine to make these metal titanium parts. It's really cool. The next one is dual mode. I mean, this is really good. It's an erbium YAG, which that's nothing by itself. But what is unusual about it, it's both collimated and fractional, all in the tips, but they have variable pulses. So what you can do with the dual mode handpiece is you can do microsecond pulses, or you can do millisecond pulses, or where the name comes from, you can do them dually in the same pulse. And what I tell people is, for years and years, erbium YAG tried to pretend it was a CO2. For years, that was the thing. Nobody liked erbium YAG. They wanted a CO2. Now, if you go out there, all the CO2s are trying to pretend that they're erbium YAGs. And I think this accomplishes both. And another one that I really like to use, I use it a lot, is what we call long pulse. Vidance is not very creative in the names of their applicators, I have to tell you. But what this is it's an ND-YAG. And so Vidance has two platforms, and it's a Xi that has an ND-YAG built in, or the Etherea that you use this handpiece. This little handpiece can operate in milliseconds, or what I call long pulse. That's still short, but it's a long pulse for laser. Or it can operate in microseconds. This handpiece is more powerful than my GentleMax Pro, this big GentleMax Pro that I have. So it goes up to 500 joules per centimeter squared. And nobody can believe it. It's all in the handpiece. So those are your hand pieces. Now, what do you do? What do you need to have an aesthetic practice? Most of you probably know this stuff, but you got to have toxins and fillers, unless you're in Queensland, I guess. You might not have to have that anymore. But I think that's part of an aesthetic practice. You have to have products. Every patient should be on, or every client should be on a skincare regimen. And I think you need energy-based devices, but I'm prejudicial. Everyone should have energy. But I'm only going to talk about energy. So what can you do? What do you need to do in an aesthetic practice? There's not that many things. You have to treat color, you have to treat texture, you have to do wrinkles, and you have to do sagging skin or skin tightening. That's it. That's all we do in aesthetics, one of these four things. And so what do I mean by color? Well, you can have unwanted red. There's only two colors, by the way, that I worry about. So if it's red, it can be things like rosacea. It can be a little bit of facial telangiectasias. It can be a lot of facial telangiectasias. This becomes a much more difficult process. Poikiloderma is an age-related, sun-related red thing. So what can you treat them with? What are your options? Well, you can get a pulse dye. We used to think every dermatologist had to have a pulse dye. I no longer think that, by the way. Even before Vidance, I didn't think that. You can do a KTP, you can do an ND-YAG, or you can do an IPL. These are the devices that will treat. And so, but do you really want to buy an expensive standalone device just to treat red spots? I'm saying maybe not. What you could do instead, you could get one of these two applicators and put them on the Etherea device. You can, IPL, I still think IPL is great for treating some red. It's better at brown, we'll talk about, than it is red. But it works. This is where I use the little round spot. I love using the round spot with IPL around the nose, because you can't get the big rectangle flat around the nose. And so I never used to treat it. But when the rosacea or erythema is worse, this is where I like to use the long pulse ND-YAG. And you can treat really bad rosacea with ND-YAG. How about brown stuff? We all know what a bad brown spot is. Could be a lentigine on the hands, on the face, could be PIH, could be, this is the worst, is melasma. So again, what's out there? You can do, if you have a V-beam perfecta, which is the only pulse dye that enables you to treat pigment, you can do pigment with it. You can do KTP, which everybody now thinks is a vascular. When it came out, 532 was for pigment. It was not for vascular. It's interesting how it's changed. Or you can use an Alexandrite laser, and you can use Pico for it. That's what I have always used Pico for. And of course, our friend, the IPL. But again, why would you really want to spend a huge amount of money just to treat brown spots where you can use one of these two applicators and just attach them with all the other applicators if you want to treat the same thing? You know, IPL, we know it's best at browns, but every IPL can treat brown. It doesn't have to be a BBL to treat brown. And I use Pico, collimated Pico, to treat brown spots, very low fluences. You can use Q-switched also. We have a Q-switched applicator that I don't recommend anybody buy. What I tell people, and they say, well, I can't really afford the Pico. I'm going to just get the Achroma, which is Q-switch. I said, save your money. Don't buy anything till you can afford the Pico. You will be sorry if you just buy a Q-switched for this. Melasma is the hardest thing to treat. And the only thing that really works for melasma, in my opinion, device-wise, because you also have to do topicals and things, is Pico. How about texture? What do I mean by texture? It could be like old acne scars. Lots of people have little fine acne scars. It wasn't a big deal with them, but lots more people have big pores. And so what's out there to do this? It's, look at the first two are ablative lasers. You can do fractional Pico, you can do fractional RF. Again, look at the prices. By the way, for the price of a single device, you can probably buy all 5 of the hand pieces I'm talking about. That's the economics of all this. But the specific ones for texture that I use are Pro Deep. And this was a Pro Deep single treatment, by the way, of this. And this was back before I do what I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then Pico toning. I've liked Pico toning for years and years for texture, for pores. How about wrinkles? You know, some people have mild wrinkles. I didn't show the picture I used to show because somebody might be offended by the wrinkles, but it can be mild, moderate, or really severe. And is there anything out there to treat wrinkles? Yeah, there's everything out there to treat wrinkles. I mean, almost every device. There's probably more than this. But again, you're not going to buy all these. You're not going to buy these just for wrinkles. I mean, that's what CO2 was originally for. You know, you would have a CO2 to treat wrinkles. But I'm telling you, if that's all it does, you're wasting your money because you want something that does way more than just wrinkles. You want it to do everything I've talked about. I love this. This is what you can do to get rid of wrinkles. I found this great article on Photoshop and how to get rid of wrinkles with Photoshop. And it was a big, long article about how you don't want to get rid of all of them because it looks, and how you get rid of, kind of moderate. So this is all you really need is Photoshop. And unfortunately, it doesn't help when you're in live, but I love that. I just loved it. But you can use one of these hand pieces to do this. Hand Pico is still a good wrinkle, but again, this is what most people look like. They don't just have wrinkles. They need some pigment. You can do Pro Deep just for wrinkles. That's actually what it came out for. It wasn't what I used it for, but that's what it was out. And then Dual Mode, the Erbium YAG by itself. How about skin tightening? I think this is the hardest, by the way, of all the things to treat. And it doesn't have to be an old person to have saggy skin. Too many, relatively young people have what they consider saggy skin. Now, I find when people come in and tell me they have saggy skin and I can't see it, I don't treat it because I know I won't make them better. I have to be able to see whatever it is they're complaining about. So what's out there? Ultrasound is, to me, the go-to skin tightening device. But, sorry, CryoMed, now that you have Softwave, but it's a little expensive for a single use device. And I don't remember how much it sells for here, so I won't say bad things. But it works, it tightens skin. My point is, can your practice afford single treatment options? And that's what this is all about. And I'm showing this one, I don't know why I showed this, but the Pro Deep I used for skin tightening. And it works by itself without anything else. This is one of my favorites. This was a single treatment. And I would venture to guess if every woman in this room were to lift up whatever they have on their legs, that their legs have some of this. This is really common. And Pro Deep is really good at tightening, especially above the knees. It's a really cool thing to do. I throw this one in only because it's a fiber that uses ND-YAG, long pulse ND-YAG. It's only on the Xi, which is nowhere in Australia as today. It will be in the future. But it's a very interesting thing. It uses 15-second pulses. That's like for laser, that's impossible. But it works. So how do I make things better? What do I do to make things even better? This is what I, by the way, do on everybody. I use multiple hand pieces in the same treatment, the same patient. I usually use the Core 4. Sometimes I replace IPL with long pulse. I tend to be doing that more than I used to. IPL is becoming a little less useful in my hands than the long pulse ND-YAG. But you can do 2 of them, you can do 3 of them, or you can do all 4. But there's a specific order. You always do IPL, long pulse first, whichever one you pick. You don't do them both, you do one or the other. Then you do hand pico, then you do Pro Deep, and lastly you do the dual mode, the erbium YAG. Now why is this? Because you treat color first. Always treat color first. And why is that? Because everything else we do changes the color. Most of it turns people red. So if you turn people red, you change the target of your IPL. IPL or long pulse, always first. So, and then hand pico, it's either surface pigment that doesn't really, it kind of adds to what you do with IPL, especially what I call low contrast. Low contrast lentigines don't respond anymore to IPL. That's where I really like this. Or if you're doing fractional, you have these LIOBs or laser-induced optical breakdown that's either in the lower epidermis or it's in the papillary dermis. It's not affected by the IPL. She's gonna get me some water. She's so sweet. Then you do Pro Deep. It's non-ablative, it's deeper. She's so good. Family, I tell you. I have definitely been talking too much in this week. So it doesn't care about color because it doesn't see color. So that's why you can do it later. And you always do non-ablative before you do ablative. And then lastly, because I just said you wait to the end to do ablative. And it's very superficial the way I do it. So what techniques do I do? See, I'm going to show you some videos so I don't have to talk all the time. Let's start with color. How do I like to do IPL? I do IPL in motion. I never stamp anymore for three reasons. One, it hurts more. Two, you can't get perfect spacing. And this is so much faster. I can do a full face, and this person's not really doing it like I do it, but in all these videos, by the way, I took a lot of these videos, that's why they're not very good, and that's why some of their technique leaves a little bit, and they're trainers, that's what's frightening. There are some of our Vidence's trainers. But if I'm going to do long pulse, there are two things that I do. One, I treat individual telangiectasias first. And you're just sitting here. And this, by the way, is, if you look at what they did it wrong. I always start at the littlest end and move to the biggest end. Because if you hit the big end, it blanches the vessel, and there's no more target. So start little and work to the big end. And then what I do is one thing you can do with long pulse is what we call the dynamics. You set it at 10 hertz in microsecond pulsing. You've heard microsecond pulsing maybe in this conference. How about Aerolase? This will do everything Aerolase can do, by the way. It can do everything Gentlemax Pro can do in the ND-YAG. It can do anything any ND-YAG can do, all in one little tiny handpiece. But then and they started it. This is how it's supposed to be done. And then I think they change, maybe, see what they do there? You never go that far away. This was a trainer. It's like, come on, a trainer in Brazil. And it's like, really? Why don't you keep it just off the skin, but you move it fast. You don't touch the skin because that slows you down if there's any pressure at all. But the closer you are, the better it works. And I was watching that video and I'm thinking, well, I should just stop it, but I'll tell you how to do it. Then I do hand pico. Now there's three different things you can do with a pico. One is you can treat individual brown spots like this. And you're thinking, well, ND-YAG doesn't treat brown spots because that's the whole purpose, like hair removal in dark skin. It does if it's picosecond. See, picosecond doesn't really care about color. And that's why I almost always use the 1064. Then I do what's called picotoning. I take their 7mm spot and I just run it over really quickly. And they actually did a pretty decent job here of showing how to do it. But this is me taking the video, so I'm not really that good at it, with my phone, by the way. But you just run it over. She's pressing a little hard, but it's a light touch, so you just keep it moving. And you just go back and forth. And then the third thing I do, and this sounds like a lot, but all these together takes 20, 25 minutes. That's it, to do all four of these layers. This is really my favorite. I absolutely love doing fractional pico toning, or pico treatments. And when I first was doing it, I did like 3 I'd be done here. The people in Brazil probably do 50 passes. They just keep going back and forth until it looks like this. And so I blew this up. This is the end point. You're looking for petechiae. So if you wonder what depth are you treating with fractional pico, it's in the upper part of the papillary dermis, depth-wise. But so you're not just treating the dermis. If we remember, the epidermis goes up and down. So if you're at the level of the highest part of the up part, if you go right next to it, you're in the epidermis. So you're doing both papillary dermis, and you know you're at that level because you get petechiae. But you're also in the epidermis. So you know what depth you're at. And then I do Pro Deep, and the advantage of Pro Deep is you don't hit every spot. It's a kind of a bulk fractional heating, if that makes any sense, because you're going deep. And so it's really fast. That's why if I'm treating like acne scars, literally it's a 5-minute procedure. or active acne, either one. 5 minutes and you're done with the whole face. And then the last is, I didn't use dual mode for the longest time because I had a CO2, I had a Deca Tetra that I really liked. I did Cool Peel, and until I started using it, this is really fun to use. You can do the same thing. You can treat individual spots, if they're raised, like little tiny sebkes, dermatosis papularis nigra, the little tiny things are really hard to treat, but you can use herbing. What you do, you hit them and then you just wipe them off with a wet gauze, and if they didn't quite go away, you hit them a couple more times. But then you're gonna, this is with they're two fractional, one is 400 microthermozones per centimeter squared and the other is 100. So a lot on the face out, you usually use the 400. I'm not impressed by the technique here because they overlap too much, but it's not too bad. But you just move it along the surface. I'm really picky when I look at video, but so if it doesn't look just like I want it to. But it's very forgiving. All these little white areas, it's kind of like frosting. It's a little different with ablative. That's gone in 5 minutes after the treatment. It disappears. But you can also do a more aggressive one with the 100. And notice they're not numbing it. It's not numbed. It doesn't really hurt. And this was a man, by the way, and so if you can treat a man, you know it doesn't hurt. But I mean, this whole thing takes about 2 minutes to do a hand. And it looks really bad, but it's not. It's very low energy, and you just, I usually put sunscreen on it after this, and that's it. But these are just some examples. Mild, kind of mild sun damage. This has like a day of downtime. I'm trying to think. We have somebody here who had an aggressive one, and you said like 4 days or 3 with the aggressive one of redness, but very minimal downtime. This was a little more aggressive. What I change on these 4 layers, I don't change the IPL, and I don't change the Pro Deep. What I do is I increase the amount of time that I do fractional pico, and I can increase the energy of my erbium YAG. Those are the things I changed, going from mild. But this is a pretty good thing. So everybody likes it when I get to this point. So yeah, I threw this in. I mean, if you haven't guessed, I absolutely love this device. There's nothing about it that I think is not right. And you guys don't know me well enough to know how cynical I am and how hard it is to impress me. It's really hard to be impressed by lasers. And this one blew me away. It was that good. So by layering, there's so many things you can treat. I mean, this device has 70 indications. And it's not, I tell you, it's not like the 70 indications that Aerolase has. At least half of the Aerolase, I hope there's no Aerolase people in here, but half those indications make no sense to me whatsoever. Like, with the parameters, but if you like that, you can get the long pulse and do everything they do for just a little bit less money. How about a tenth the difference? But the advantage of doing layering is you can lower the energy for each level, and so you really have much less. If the only thing that I do cooling with, or any kind of numbing, is with Pro Deep, because it's a little spicy. And with Zimmer, or I use Vidance Siberian. They're all the same. A chiller's a chiller, but you can increase the energy safely with Pro Deep with a chiller. But that's the only one of all 4 or 5 of these that you need any kind of pain management. And there are things that I didn't talk about here. that make this so valuable. Like ProDeep, for instance, one applicator. I do all my active acne with it, better than my Aviclear that sits in the corner and never gets touched. It works better, it's faster, it's less painful. It doesn't hurt at all versus with Aviclear, I had women crying. Men were screaming, but women were crying. And when women cry, that's gotta be painful. So active acne, acne scars, stretch marks, wrinkles, hair restoration, not hair removal, hair restoration, and hidradenitis suppurativa, just for one of the hand pieces. And I could go through lists like that for each and every one. That's what makes this such an amazing device to me, and everyone's very favorite one. So we have time here, so if you guys have questions, this would be a great opportunity to answer them.
Steve, sorry, why do you not use a cooler for your dual mode handpiece?
Well, because it doesn't hurt. There's a couple reasons that you don't use cooling or cold air with dual mode. One is it's ablative, so it makes a little bit of smoke. So you need a smoke evacuator. And if you're blowing cold air on it, the smoke's going everywhere. And that's why I have it at settings that don't require any pain management. And again, this is including men, so it can't hurt.
But it doesn't burn the hair when you're treating. Can you explain how, because it's heat and it's generating heat, how is it not burning the hair when you're treating?
Well, that's the secret of hair restoration with ProDeep. You have to do it at a really low energy. So, for instance, and this became a problem for us in America because there are two fractional handpieces that you have available in Australia and every other country in the world except for America. You have the 8mm that's 100 microthermal zones, and you have the 10mm that's 400. The 10mm goes down to 10 millijoules, or actually goes down to 5 millijoules. The one we have only goes down to 60. And 60 burns hair. So I managed to get Vidance to change the energy, I had them lower the energy in every device in America so that we could treat hair with it, down to 10. And so if you use low fluences, you don't burn the hair. And that's why the hair transplant people like this as an add-on, because you're not burning the hair. The wavelength will burn it if it's high enough. And plus it doesn't hurt. And that's one of the advantages. So the market for this is probably not as much in men as it is in women. A lot of women have thinning hair and they'll do almost anything to fix it. And so the technique that you do, you have one of those combs with this long, sharp, dangerous looking thing. You just make a part, you go down the part one way and back the other way, then you move it over, you make a part and move the hair out of the way, same thing, you go across the entire scalp with it. And it takes 5 or 10 minutes to do a whole scalp. It's very fast. And you're not burning any hair. Even if it worked and you were burning hair, there's no woman in the world that would do it. You're not gonna say, oh, it'll be better once the burned hair goes away. But no, it doesn't burn hair at all. I hope that answers. Yes?
The technique you just mentioned, is it going one direction and as you are from where you've left off going back, or lifting up and coming again?
I just go one way and come back. But for full disclosure, I always do something else. I either use topical exosomes or topical minoxidil. For some reason, combining ProDeep with one of those modalities works far better than either one works by itself. I don't think Pro Deep by itself is very effective. Topical exosomes and topical minoxidil is a little bit effective, but combining them is really effective. I could have shown pictures, but that wasn't, I was trying to not make this 2 hours long. But it's a very effective way of getting hair restoration. That's probably the most popular use, yes?
I'm only very new to the whole laser. When you say it can treat wrinkles, has it been effective or shown to be effective with glycation?
For what? I'm sorry.
Like around
Well, you can be very aggressive
Yeah.
around, when the wrinkles are big. And I apologize for not hearing that. There's something, I swear, I have trouble understanding Australian women's voices more than any other thing in the world. So if I don't quite, but yeah, you can be very aggressive with, especially with erbium, with the dual mode, to treat bigger wrinkles. But Pro Deep, see, the way the combination works so well is you're not just doing ablative, you're doing a deeper non-ablative, that combination works way better. And that's how I treat bigger wrinkles around the mouth and sometimes over by the eyes. Any other questions?
So you know how you were saying when you treat hair restoration, you go one way and then you go back over it the other way? I noticed when Mark had his aggressive 4-4, and obviously it was a lot higher setting, the clinical trainer said to us to treat one way and not snake, but
Right.
that way and not the other. Because when the doctor did snake one side, we noticed there was a lot more swelling.
Yeah.
So that's just to do with the heat.
It's the fact that it's such a low fluence. And so people say, well, not fluence energy, but people say, well, what's it doing? I wish I knew exactly, but my best guess of what's happening at high energy, you're remodeling collagen. That's what we're doing with high energy Pro Deep. With low energy Pro Deep, you're stimulating new vascular. It's an increase in the vascularity. And so people say, well, why does it work? I tell you, it's the depth. It's all about the depth of 1340. 1340 is this magical depth. And there's some explanation for this. So when you compare, for instance, 1540 and 1340, the 1540 is about 10 times more absorbed by water. And things that are absorbed by water don't penetrate very well. CO2 and erbium are the perfect examples. They don't go anywhere because of water absorption. So the fact that in non-ablative 1540 versus 1340, there's a 10-fold difference in water absorption. It allows the 1340 to go much deeper. And it's that magic depth, and it's somewhere between 0.7 and 1.0 millimeters. There's an article talking about that 90% of the energy of Pro Deep is in that range, 0.7 to 1 millimeter. And that appears to be this amazingly positive depth, that's what makes it work. And that's what it works even at low energies for hair. It gets it to the level where the increased vascularity seems to be making a big difference. Same way with higher fluences or higher energies, not fluences, higher energies where you're doing collagen remodeling. It's at a depth at which it's much more likely to make collagen.
I know that you said that the dual mode's still quite gentle, but for the intraoral handpiece, what's the recovery like doing it intraorally?
Oh, yeah, what I didn't, because of limitations on how detailed I want to go. One of the things, in Australia, you have these other hand pieces or other spots that hook onto the dual mode. And one of them is called InLift, which is for intraoral treatments. And it sounds weird for an ablative thing to be inside your mouth, but it's not really ablative. It's a special kind of pulsing. So most fractional pulses are just boom, you do it. But this one has 16 little sub-pulses. And so it doesn't really ablate. So you put it inside the cheek and you fire and hold it. I'll tell you why I say hold it. You hold it, it pulses, you move it, you do about 50 pulses inside the cheek. This is a new way we're doing resurfacing. We're using that heat from that on the inside to build collagen that helps. It's almost like putting filler in. It's a really cool way to do it. I have had videos, but that was just too much. I didn't even think to do that. But there's another hand piece or tip for the dual mode they call True Lift, which is the same pulsing that we do for under the eyes and the lips, but you can use the in-lift to do the same thing, because you don't have True Lift here yet, I don't think, but you have in-lift. And so when you're doing under the eyes and on the lips, you actually move it during the pulse. It goes bzz, 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 just like that. That's what it sounds like. And so it's a movement thing where inside the mouth you hold it steady. The other thing they're using it for snoring by treating the uvula. There's certain types of snoring that it works for, but again, you can do it inside the mouth because there's no plume. You don't have to stick your smoke evacuator in their mouth. But this is just another. There's so many more examples that you could go on what this machine can do. I think of myself as being fairly knowledgeable about lasers. It took me a good 6 months to really understand everything this thing would do. I was surprised how hard it was to really learn everything about it, because it does so many things. So that's what's fun about it, by the way, is you could just do more and more. And these are the things we know about. I'm sure that we'll start playing with it even more and find other stuff, especially dual modes becoming a really useful tool for me that I never thought I'd need, ever. Trust me, you don't put your CO2 inside your mouth for any reason. Any other questions? Yes?
Would you know the micron depth of through the tissue that the Pro, is it
The ProDeep?
ProDeep, yes.
The ProDeep goes somewhere between the non-ablative stuff. You can get down to about 680 microns, but the heat goes a little deeper. Even when you look at remember that histology I showed, the blue, the typical non-ablative histology, that goes to about 600 microns, 650, but the heat goes a little bit deeper than that. It doesn't cause the coagulation change in histology, but the heat is much deeper, because that study that I said, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they measured the heat like that, but there must be some way they do it.
You didn't actually say, sorry, just one minute, maybe. It was more, I was referring to the dual mode, the depth of the micron.
And that it's very shallow.
Even when you do like the CO2 sort of possible mimicking?
See, I don't like, if you do the dual mode setting, you can get into the superficial dermis. I don't very often go that deep. You can go deeper with CO2, but I'm not sure there's an advantage. The way I look at it, I'd rather let the ProDeep layer go deeper and the ablative laser stay more superficial. So you're getting the same effect as a real aggressive CO2 without having the downtime of poking that big hole all the way down to the mid-dermis.
Thank you. That was my question.
Oh. Well, I think we're actually almost out of time even yet. Well, I appreciate everybody coming. I was a little worried no one would be here. They were all probably out a little late last night. Well, thank you.
Thank you.